scaling up your teams, scaling up your linen, are you using contractors, are you using in-house technicians? Do you have all your processes built out? No short-term rental is going to function or perform well if the house isn't maintained.
You've built a very successful company, 200 or so properties under management. What worked as far as homeowner acquisition in those early days? And has that channel for homeowner acquisition evolved as you have scaled?
For anyone starting this, as an owner of the business, that's probably the best person to sell it because you're the one that believes in it and you know the process, you know everything.
What have you learned about that sweet spot that you have to be in to make sure that the team is not burnt out, but to make sure that you have the capacity to handle what's coming ahead?
How are we going to do this on a regular basis so we can standardize this? Every owner have a different expectation. Every owner needs to know this is our service, this is how we perform, and this is how we're going to set up your home.
How do you go about standardizing without affecting quality of service? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hospitality Edge podcast, where we bring together what we think are two sides of the same coin, real estate and hospitality, and really where we aim to bring together operators, entrepreneurs, leaders, investors, and founders in the vacation rental space so they can tell us about their stories and the lessons that they have learned along the way, perhaps even some of the mistakes they might have made along the way so we can avoid making those same mistakes ourselves. Today, I'm super excited to be here with Philip Wilburn. He's the co-founder and CEO at Hoste. Thanks so much, Philip, for being here with us today. Before we get started, where are you taking the call from?
I'm actually in Colorado Springs right now, but yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So you've built a very successful company, relatively large company, 200 or so properties under management. I want to start by asking you, if you had to start all over again and you could change something, what, if anything, would you do differently in this business?
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky question. This was my first business, so I made so many different mistakes. But I would say, I mean, probably the key piece is just staying focused on one or very few key areas. There's always these sexy new ideas going around where you kind of get caught up trying to do a lot of things at once. And I think probably just focusing on our core functions, which for me is just cleaning and maintenance, maintaining the properties. At one point we tried to do in-house experiences, which I thought they went really well, but it kind of got away from our core function. We got spread too thin, trying to build too many processes at once and too many functions at once. And it kind of just limits you, spreads all your teams thin, and then ultimately just affects your core product. So I guess that's probably my broad answer.
So let's say you're talking to that younger Philip, right? That's about to start this new company called Hoste. So if we summarize what you just said, basically you're saying, like, know what business you're in, know what your core functions are, and you think those core functions, of course, should be cleaning and maintenance. So in other words, like making sure that you can excel at cleaning and maintenance, from the get-go as much as possible.
Yeah, from every function of that, are those departments efficient? Are they profitable? Are they effective? And as as I learned as we scaled, of course, scaling up your teams, scaling up your linen warehouse, however way you want to do that. And then as far as maintenance, right? Are you using contractors? Are you using in-house technicians? But do you have all your processes built out, and are you efficient at those two? Because in my opinion, that is what this business is. No short-term rental is going to function or perform well if the house isn't maintained, the amenities, and then it's not getting cleaned properly. It sounds very simple and very basic, but I made the mistake of kind of getting away from that at one point. And again, focusing into too many other areas that are kind of more add-ons or cherries on top to the service and the experience that you're providing your guests.
And so as part of that advice that you're giving to Philip starting Hoste again, would you recommend that you don't delegate, cleaning and maintenance, and you figure out a way to do it in-house properly from the get-go?
I think it can be done well either way. It just comes down to, if you're using outside maintenance contractors, what are the costs, and what are the response times? If you can
Mhm,
find the right contractors that are going to be able to have a quick response,
mhm,
and charge relatively lower diagnostic fees, trip fees, things like that, you
mhm,
can make it work. But it just comes down to your partners. What I found was with the maintenance piece, the response times weren't there, and there was just too much cost associated with using contractors.
mhm,
And then there are also additional benefits you can get from that, doing preventive maintenance inspections, a lot more preventive things, getting in the home before the guests catch the issues and inspecting the homes more frequently. Whereas you can't really get that with contractors.
Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. Well, thanks for sharing that. Let's now get into a little bit of the story of how you started Hosty. So you were in the military before. Thank you for your service. Can you tell us a little bit about how you go from being in the military to ending up in the vacation rental industry?
Yeah, it was. Hmm, never thought I'd actually be in property management, or I guess I didn't plan to. But 2017, I was getting out of the Air Force, transitioning out, and I moved quite a bit the last 2 years of my transition. So I went from California, got my realtor license, started practicing there, moved in PCS got stationed at a new base for my last year in New Mexico. So I got my realtor's license there. And then I actually ended up moving to Colorado Springs. Got my realtor's license here. So I was looking at maybe getting into property investment. And I'd purchased a home here in Colorado Springs. I was started out renting it out, travel nurses, just renting out 4 of my 5 bedroom in my home. But I love the revenue that I was getting from it. So initially it was my business partner, which is my brother, and he was kind of in the same situation. He was also in the Air Force. Um, we honestly were looking for a property management company in Colorado Springs at the time, and we couldn't find one. And it just happened to be a good opportunity where, I just got out of the Air Force, didn't really have a lot on my plate other than managing my own short term rental. And we threw up a website. We did a lot of market research, looked at the market, and there was just a huge demand for it. So what was kind of going to be part time kicked off kind of full speed, and there was just a huge need in the market, and we just got a lot of homes relatively quick.
Mhm,
So we just kind of jumped into it right off the bat, and even at the time there wasn't even a lot of information on short-term rental management companies. This is
mhm,
still a fairly new industry, especially from the property management side of it. And there just wasn't a lot of information out there. So it was kind of trial by error, kind of figure out what's the best way to set this up, what's the best key ways to make this function. And when we originally started, we managed a couple of friends' houses and friends' single bedrooms and things like that. But ultimately, we found you know the um, the business we liked was the full turnkey solution, where we just operate and we take on everything from the property management side, the guest communication, the revenue management, just every piece of it, and just trying to give owners an opportunity to build their wealth through these investment
mhm.
type properties.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks for sharing that. So, just to dig deeper into that process of you deciding to start this. So you go out there, you try to find a property management company. Was it that you couldn't find one that kind of met your standards and what you were looking for? Like what did you find as the gap?
There really weren't any full turnkey solutions.
Oh, there
It
just
was
weren't any. Okay.
Yeah, there really weren't any. There were a couple that were, they were long-term property management companies who were kind of trying out the space, but there wasn't
Hmm.
any real true full turnkey solutions with any experience. So yeah, there just really
Interesting.
wasn't one.
Interesting. And and so you decide to go ahead and start building that, right? And so you said that owners started coming relatively fast. um make sense if there was no other, alternative. But other than that, like,
Yeah.
what worked as far as like homeowner acquisition in those early days, and has that channel for homeowner acquisition evolved as you have sort of scaled past the point
Yeah.
of just having a handful of properties?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of used just some almost realtor sales tactics, cold calling, handing out cards, knocking doors, going to visit businesses, some general kind of business development. Um, and I think at the time that works quite well. I don't think, we built a website. We did do quite a bit of work on our SEO, and we had a pretty good position within Google search for our website. So we did start after the first year, we did start generating quite a few leads just from SEO on our website. But yeah, a lot of it was kind of old school, cold calling, knocking, shaking people's hands, just spreading the
Hmm.
word of Hoste. And I think for anyone starting this, you have a lot more weight and a lot more. It as an owner of the business, that's probably the best person to sell it, because you're the one that believes in it, and the process, everything. And at the time, especially when we first started, I was doing maintenance, I was doing cleaning, I was doing guest communications, and a little bit of everything, which was tough, but it helped me learn every position and
Hmm.
how to kind of set it up, how to hire for it, how to structure it.
Hmm.
It helped go quite a long way.
Nice, interesting. Tell me a little bit about that relationship with your brother, because if I understood correctly, so the two of you started it. Both were in the Air Force, correct? And so, just curious to know, like, as far as skill sets that you guys brought to the table, or personalities, how complementary were there, the two, skill sets that you brought to the table, and what was that kind of structure that you decided to put in place, in terms of, you do this side, I do that side, or when did you start,
Yeah.
putting responsibilities and boundaries and whatnot?
Yeah. I mean, it was kind of easy to kind of decide that. I mean, I had some sales background just from doing a couple of years of real estate. So obviously I took that side of things. But my brother at the time was still in the Air Force. So he didn't really have the time commitment to be able to, really be there, work on operations or anything like that. So we decided, he was going to kind of take the financial and accounting piece.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as like our backgrounds, we were both IT. So that really helped setting up, systems, even from, something like our lock system, links and
Hmm.
things like that. A
Hmm.
lot of the integrations through Airbnb and PMSs, like we had a lot of experience on the digital front.
Hmm.
Um, but as far as the operations and cleaning and maintenance and all that, that was kind of brand new. We were kind of fresh at it and just kind of learning it. But I mean, ultimately, that was kind of the structure we set up, just because he wasn't able to physically um, be there day to day. He had a lot of time commitments with the Air Force. We kind of just set it up that way, where he was kind of, again, functioning accounting, financials, um, more marketing, kind of a lot of the more digital side of things. I took operations and sales.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So back when you were at the Air Force, so it was more on the IT side, and that's where the IT background comes from. What would you say, um, that experience gave you in terms of, things that you put in practice still to this day in the way you run your business, or lead your people?
Yeah. Well, it's like how you do anything is how you do everything. At least that's my view. And, um, with IT, my brother was network infrastructure. I was network administrator. So, I'm where everything's interconnected, from from the switch and the router to the server, all the way to the node, which is the computer. And a lot of it was kind of project management, um, in a sense, working with other teams, other departments, to get the endpoint, which is the node, up and functioning correctly, and communication flowing. So in a lot of ways it was very, very similar to that. At least, the broad assessment of it was very, very similar. All these different departments that we're going to set up have to communicate effectively and work well together. So I guess that's probably one of the key pieces that we kind of brought from our
project management, basically. Yeah, because a lot of what we do, especially when it comes to, okay, now you have to set up your onboarding process, maintenance, cleaning, everything we've been talking about, it in a way is project management. If you were to tell us a little bit of like project management 101, these are the ways in which you go about running a project effectively, whatever project that is. You just talked about communication between team members. I'm sure that must be a key element. What other tips would you say, that again, that experience of having done this, in the Air Force, as far as working with complex IT systems that I'm not even sure I understood, what it were in terms of the nudges and all the technicalities, but like, how did you go about applying that again in the business space? What else other than communication is an important element of proper project management?
Yeah, you have to lay the project out, and all of the necessary tasks that need done within that project. So for, onboarding, for instance, right? Who's going to be communicating with the owner on these key pieces, and the dates and timelines that are going to fall until project is complete, and then establishing who is going to be doing each piece of this project, and then communicating that effectively throughout the process as it's being done. And then, of course, documenting SOP processes. How are we going to do this on a regular basis so we can standardize this? So every owner, we're not telling something, totally different as they're coming on, right? They have a different expectation for what our service is going to be. Every owner needs to know, hey, this is our service, this is how we perform, and this is how we're going to set up your home, all the way up until it goes live.
So knowing what are all the deliverables, the timelines and deadlines for those deliverables, who's in charge of what, and then proper communication along the way. Makes sense. Now, tell me something, and I'm shifting topics a little bit, but I want to touch on it again because it has to do with your IT background. This whole idea of, like, you were mentioning earlier that you guys launched your owners portal, right? So of course now you guys have volume, 200 properties or so. It makes sense to some degree, but at the same time, a lot of people would argue, that the business that you're in is not technology development. So I'm curious to know how you think through, in-house technology development. When does it make sense? When does it not make sense? And do you think it's the type of thing that you only did because of your background, but other operators that don't have such a background should kind of like beware and not step into these kind of crazy territories? Yeah. What can you tell us about that?
Well, first I'll say it is very costly. So anyone looking to step into this, it's going to cost you more than you think it is. I promise you. Especially if you're hiring out different development teams, it rarely ever hits the deadlines. It always gets, deadlines always get pushed forward when it comes to development. It's just kind of the name of the game. For someone looking to start to develop, that I would first probably look to see if someone's already developed it, because in that case, it's probably going to be a lot cheaper. Something to consider too is you're going to have to maintain it. There's going to be a cost associated to maintaining it, updating it, not just updating key features, but just maintain it in general. Did we do this because we have a background in IT? I'd say we're probably more comfortable. A lot of my contacts are software developers, so I was able to kind of ping off them and say, hey, this is our idea for this development project. What are your thoughts on that? What are limitations that we may run into? So that did help, and that did give us a lot more confidence going into it. I'm not a software developer by trade. Again, I was network administrator, which is just more server management. So I didn't have a lot of necessarily experience in it. But again, I had the right contacts to speak with and validate the idea before we move forward with it.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you have to look at what size you are and where you're looking to scale. It could be, we developed ours fairly early, I'd say, in relation to our scale, but that was for the thought of, hey, we want to scale. We can't find the right owner portal features that we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
We want to customize it. We want to bring in house. There's some key features we want to bring in and integrate with our other platforms. And I think that's probably the main challenge that people are going to have, or the reason they're going to do it, is to integrate with their tech stack.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the PMS or whatever you're using, a lot of times they don't have specific integrations with all your tech stack, so it doesn't really work that well. In our case, we were using a PMS where our accounting system wasn't necessarily tied to it. So the owner portal and revenue numbers and any of the analytical numbers that we were presenting to our owners weren't accurate. It wasn't real time. So you'd have an owner's got a certain amount that they're projected for the month, but it's not accounting for, hey, we had these cancellations, or we've had extensions, or any of those things. It wasn't accounting for. It wasn't truly accurate. And it was just very basic. It was almost like I'd rather not even give an owner portal just because of how bad it is. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was kind of the thoughts of like, okay, let's develop something out that'll integrate with all of our different systems where we can get accurate readings of information, and then keep building on it, adding to it.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things are right. You mentioned, of course, it's going to be expensive. It's going to take longer and cost more than you think it will. You said you did it relatively early. What is relatively early, and is that like this same project that we're talking about, the owners portal project that you did relatively early, or is there like
Yeah.
other developments you guys have done in house as well?
I mean, that was probably the main one, other than some accounting projects and just automations in general. I'd say early, just because at the scale we were at and the cost of it didn't really align. And again, that was more for, hey, this is for our future. This is our future growth.
But what
So
is
I
what
mean,
is early? Like, is it
it's
because is
early.
it something
Yeah.
is it something you released recently, but you just have been working on for like such a long time that's when you say like you started investing very early, but the final product is live just now, or just kind of to understand the timeline on
Yeah.
when you
I want
decide
to.
to make that investment.
Yeah. Scale, we were probably at, around 140, 150 properties. That was when we started development, it was about 2.5 years ago. And then we released it about a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of getting close to that 200 unit property threshold,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
which, that's kind of moving in. That's small, but moving into kind of mid-size vacation rental company. But again, I would always just suggest look and see if it's already out there, if it's already built. And with this industry being so new, there is so much new development that I see popping up every day. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, there is another owner portal that has a lot of key features that I saw just a couple months ago. If that was already out, we probably wouldn't have developed it out.
Interesting. Yeah, and you see that's what I was trying to get to, right? As far as because I hear people sometimes tell me things like, "Oh, I have a custom PMS." I'm like, "Wow, okay." Like when did you develop it, right? Because like there's so many
There's so many PMSs
PMSs
up.
out there that's you wonder like why did you find the need to build a PMS, and then I sometimes it's like, well, because I had very specific needs and like nothing could adapt to my needs. So it's like when do you kind of like say, you know what, it's not worth the investment because what's out there is good enough, versus when do you say, you know what, this customization is a must for my vision and my company? And like, I guess in your case it was just like you couldn't find anything out there, and that's where
Yeah.
you decided to pursue this. But But it's
Yeah, but
interesting to
I
know
mean,
that. Yeah. Hmm.
you can always, shop around and then ask these software companies, do you have, if you have key features that you're looking at, maybe they don't have them yet, but do they have them in their pipeline? Are they going to be
Hmm.
developing in the next 6 months and a year? And can you wait? Um,
Hmm. Hmm. Makes
yeah,
sense.
always shop around.
Philip, what do you think is your most important role as a CEO, and how has that evolved with time?
Yeah. Um, so I was, kind of COO, more focused in operations, but
Hmm.
where we're at, the scale we're at, and moving forward, I mean, it's leadership, it's people, making sure that everyone has the appropriate tools that they need to do their job. Um, that's probably the core function, and then what is the strategy moving forward? A lot of times it's kind of being a cheerleader for the
Mm.
team, right? Keeping everyone excited about what's to come, and then reminding them of the successes and accomplishments that you've done in the past. That I mean, that to me, it's always about the people, and it's about your team.
Hmm. You mentioned earlier that this was your first company, right? Um, is there anything that didn't come natural to you that you really had to work on developing as far as skill sets when it comes to jumping into entrepreneurship for the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I had no experience. In the Air Force, I had experience supervising people, and I had people under me. But as far as going out and hiring people specific for a job, I didn't have any experience there. And then I'd say another one of my limitations was just the accounting, financial piece. Just didn't have any experience there, even down to reading a P&L. Those are all things I kind of had to learn. So those are probably my kind of difficult points
But you
I had
you
to
you
brush up on.
tackled it one at a time, and figured it out. Makes sense. How would you break down, if you had to tell a story, or let's say, yeah, just walk us through the stages of growth that you've had. um at which point did you realize, okay, we kind of hit a ceiling here, and something just broke, and we need to solve that before we can continue scaling, and then what were those kind of yeah, stages that you went through of growth, if we could refer to it in property count? I think that could be a way where we could kind of relate.
Yeah, probably the first couple years, we bootstrapped it, so we were kind of doing everything ourselves. Um, the first stage was once we got to. It's hard to say the amount of properties, but it's probably somewhere in the 35 to 50 property range, where it was like, okay, I'm pretty limited on my time and ability to do all these things and spin all these plates. We need to start hiring people out. We need to start building a team versus myself and my brother being the whole team. So
Hmm.
there was that, with kind of a scaling plateau at that point. And then I think probably another scaling tier was like right at 100 properties. Um, right around there, we started seeing that our quality was being affected. We weren't, we started taking hits and reviews, and in fact, we kind of, as a result, we overhired because of that, and didn't necessarily hire in the right positions. But yeah, I'd say probably 35 to 50 properties, and then the 100 property mark was kind of another tier plateau of scale.
Hmm. You talk about over hiring, right? And I think scaling is this ongoing dance with trying to be ready for the growth that's coming ahead, but also do so in a way that you're not over hiring, right? So it's like trying to balance, under hiring, with over hiring. So, what have you learned about that sweet spot that you have to be in, to make sure that the team is not burnt out, but to make sure that you have the capacity to handle what's coming ahead?
Yeah, I mean, it's having your focus in the right areas. When I say overhiring, a lot of that was For the experiences that we started, we had in-house chefs, we had, someone facilitating the scheduling of that. We had we ended up hiring account managers for kind of piecing out each. Yeah, I think it was like 25 to 50 properties per account manager. We really wanted to see if like we could continue to give our owners a very personal feel and have an individual that knows everything inside and out the property. The challenge with that was, we've got account managers going to properties, inspecting them, and at the same time, we've got owners reaching out, trying to call, communicate, and a lot of digital communication happening at the same time. And they're almost two conflicting positions. And honestly, like those personality types are a little different too. So it was kind of just restructuring. It was, restructuring to, hey, we need somebody as just dedicated individual inspector. And then we need somebody really good at communicating with these owners that knows, hey, permit information, the digital listing optimization pieces and any financial pieces, right? So they could just be focused on that one particular area, and that they're available for phone calls or emails and text messages from owners.
Right. So sometimes, yeah, it's like you try to combine two roles in one person because you have limited resources and you're trying to bootstrap your growth, but it's like, yeah, you end up in a position where like you're trying to get two very different things out of someone that, to your point, sometimes require different skill sets, different personalities, and then you can start to afford more specialization as you scale. uh, what's unique about your org chart? I'm curious, like, is there anything unique about the way that you've decided to structure your teams, precisely from this trial and error of saying, okay, this actually needs to be two roles, and oh, actually this can be combined into one role? Like, what's unique about your org chart in that sense?
Yeah, I mean, our onboarding specialist is our inspection specialist. They're doing both of those functions. We
Onboarding
built out.
specialist is the inspection for the beginning process, like, or on an ongoing basis as well, like your onboarding person inspects the properties on a recurring basis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that made sense to us because they're already going to the property, getting very familiar with it, inspecting it. And two, there may not be, enough onboardings in the week necessarily to fill all of their time. So we can utilize them in other areas like that.
Interesting.
Another thing we did was we built out a customer support team. That's for, specific positions that are curtailed to guests and owners, but it's a 24-hour guest and owner support team, where it doesn't matter anytime you call, someone's going to answer. And with that, this past year, I think we've averaged a 6-minute or below response rate to guests, which I don't know that I've seen anybody else with that type of response time.
So you combined the support from guests, um, with the support to the owners. That's interesting. Yeah, so you can have that ability to basically take on calls at any time. Um,
Well,
that's interesting.
what
I
we've
guess for a
what we
level one,
found
right, with owners.
Yeah, we still have like a dedicated owner success manager that's
Yeah.
kind of answering higher level calls. But what we found was, the majority of the questions that owners were reaching out to were very similar to either it's a guest question, they're in the home and they either want to report something, or it's a lockout issue or whatever it is. It's a guest issue, or they're just very low level things that team can solve. And then anything, financial, revenue management, permitting, those type of things will get escalated. But we just found that it was at least 75% of owner questions and owners reaching out was just like a quick question. Hey, I'm gonna be stopping by the property. And we
Mhm.
didn't necessarily need a dedicated account manager to receive that and communicate that to the appropriate teams.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually when you think about it. Um, Now, you mentioned too that one of the functions that you're still directly, involved in overseeing is revenue management. Of course, when it comes to homeowner questions and support, right? Level one support is that 24/7. Let's call it guest services team. I'm sure there's a level two where it gets escalated to that customer success or owner success role you have. Specifically, when it comes to revenue management questions, I'm curious to know how you have managed to, equip your owner success reps with, either the knowledge or the tools to be able to address revenue management related questions when they're not the ones doing the revenue management.
Yeah, it's right. It's not going to be kind of high level market strategy at all. But there, I mean, again, I don't think a owner needs to get in the weeds of that. Um, and through some marketing newsletters to our owners, we kind of communicate those things to them. Hey, here's the strategy. Here's how the market looks this year, or here's how this quarter did. Here's how this seasonality looks. For them, it's just very basic level of like, how are they performing compared to last year? Or it may not be revenue management specific questions, but there's just very basic revenue management questions that they have
Mm-hmm.
access to the data. They can look at it and let that owner know. And then again, if it's not enough or the owner needs kind of more, then it'll get escalated.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't get that many owners, and this gets into the topic of like pricing flexibility and control, and the importance of that, of course, when it comes to offering good results to homeowners. But do you get a lot of homeowners kind of questioning rates and why did you rent at this price, and having to have that back and forth in terms of minimum rates and whatnot? Or do you tend to be kind of very extremely selective about like, this is how we do things, and if you like it, well, and if not, well, good luck.
Yeah. It's kind of a blend. Yeah, we do get those questions of, hey, these slow season rates are really low, or hey, these rates are too high. You can get that question. Hey, are these rates too high? Um, we kind of operate for the most part of like, hey, this is how we do it. We've been doing this for a long time. Trust us, and let the performance speak for itself. But there are specific exceptions that we'll have if the owner wants a specific minimum that they want. It may be a negotiation. They want it at $100, but the market is kind of more in the $90 range. Then we'll kind of, hey, how about we set it at 95? We'll see how it goes. Um, Often, what I find for the most part is when owners get involved and dictate the pricing, it ends up negatively affecting performance. And again, it's just, the access to data and information that an individual owner may have is, it may be limited, I think, in that aspect. And it may be out of a more emotional response or
Hmm.
uninformed response. But I always kind of kick myself um, in hindsight, because an owner will basically talk me into, hey, I want these specific rates for these specific dates or this specific minimum. It doesn't end up performing very well, and it's like, I told you so kind of conversation, which doesn't help
Yeah.
anybody. But yeah, for the most part, we like to maintain as much control over that as we can.
Hmm.
Because again, we're from the sell point, we're setting these specific projections and these metrics. Unless we stick to our strategy, it's going to be hit or miss, or kind of throwing darts in the dark trying to hit
Hmm.
those. If you're
Hmm.
letting your owners dictate, your pricing strategies.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here on this topic because we always come back to the same, which is like, yeah, you can either, as an owner, you know, have control over your rates and make less money because you're not making decisions based on the data, and you know time and time again, I mean, you're referring to cases where you come back and you show that, hey, we accepted your rates or your minimums, and look at what's happened. So I think yeah, we talked to a lot of property managers about that. You know, the importance of just homeowner education, making sure that as much as possible we can have that pricing flexibility, and homeowner education is also helping them understand that of course you have the same objectives, incentives are aligned, but also homeowner education sometimes is just making them see things in a different way, right? Because there might be some owners that are more analytical, there might be some that need more analogies, there might be some that just want to see something visual, right? So what have you found work as far as that goes? Homeowner education, you said newsletter, so let's talk a little bit about that. Is that a weekly thing, monthly thing, yearly thing? And then what else do you do when it comes to homeowner education on your end?
Yeah, the revenue management newsletters, we typically do them going into different seasons. So into slow season, into peak season, just setting those expectations. Hey, we're going into slow season. Expect this type of occupancy, this type of AER. Our goal for these months is to break even. Don't necessarily think you're going to break the bank here. Going into heavy season, of course, hey, here's what we're forecasting. Here's what booking windows look like. Just some basic market information. But we typically do those either once a quarter or semi-annually for those ones. And then for individual owners, what we do is it's based on a frequency, obviously up to them, but once a quarter or semi-annually or even somewhat annually is an individual call with them to go over performance. Here's what reviews look like. Here's what your revenue performance looks like. Here's some suggestions we have for the property based off what guests are asking for. That's typically the main source of kind of owner education are those. And then of course we have newsletters where we'll talk about product updates and different launches and things like that. Those may be once a month, maybe once. Yeah, it just depends what we have in the pipeline for projects.
That makes sense. What are you the most proud of in terms of what you guys have been able to achieve at Hosty?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, I think just building a sustainable business model. Um, other than a couple functions, I mean, for the most part, I'm quite confident it could function without me. And I'm probably just the teams that we've built. We have really good teams, and people on our team that are just dedicated to this, and they just kick butt. So yeah, probably those two things: our team and just building a sustainable business. It's a tough one for a first business. I'm sure you know that. It's me and my brother always talk about it. It's like 5 different businesses in one. Just simply the accounting and financials itself, like the P&Ls in this business they look crazy. There's so many line items you have to account for, and it's just very complex. Then you have a cleaning business, you may have a laundry business, you may have a maintenance business, you may have a guest communications business. To me, it's like several businesses in one to have all the function together
Yeah.
and function well.
Not to mention you have multiple clients too. You have to deal with the guests, you have to deal with the owner, you have to deal with I mean, it's not clients, but stakeholders, the employees, the vendors, the OTAs, the list goes on and on.
Yeah, yeah.
So sustainability, you talked about sustainability, building a sustainable business. So wanna dig a little bit deeper into that. So you said, okay, so the business can thrive with or without me. So that's one of the elements that you are using to refer to sustainability, right? The fact that it's a business, right? It's a machine that can run with or without you, and I think that's crucial in terms of graduating, so to speak, from a solopreneur or even lifestyle type of company to a real business, right? So that's interesting. Now, the other element of sustainability, of course, is making sure that you're growing in a way that that is sustainable, right? That is not leading to people, having burnout or breaking or leaving, throughout the process. So how have you approached sustainability, right? Building a sustainable business, which is what you said you're most proud of, in the context of thinking about your growth?
Yeah, I mean it's standardization as much as possible. Documentation, standardization. That's specific to like what is your customer owner avatar? Do you take on any kind of property, budget property, luxury property, and everything there in between apartment? They all have their nuances and they all are managed a little bit differently. And you essentially have to build processes around all of those. So I'd say like creating a standard customer avatar first. Hey, we want this particular type of home, this particular type of owner. This is what we're looking for. That makes scaling so much easier. That's probably the core piece. But as far as like the quality of the product, because at the end of the day, it's the guest experience is the product. And that comes down to what I said earlier was just maintaining the home with good maintenance, keeping the amenities updated, and then keeping it clean, getting it cleaned well, down to the deep clean, and the inventory of the house. That's a challenging one too, right? You got every single house is completely different, from the HVAC system to the cable company that they use, the internet company that they use. It's a different router. Everything is different. It's not like hotels. They figured this out a long time ago, right? They've got a warehouse full of inventory. Something breaks, they can replace it right away. Very cost effective. With this, it's like, you've got a house where hot water heater goes out or a cooler goes out, something very specific. It's difficult to maintain. So if the more standardization that you can do with those things, the easier it's going to be to scale, because, each individual property is probably going to average more revenue, higher reviews over time, and it's going to be easier to maintain.
That's interesting. I want to hear your thoughts on this. Okay, I'm going to try to play devil's advocate here, because I'm big, on standardization as well. I think it's, if you want scale, like, you have to have standardization. Um, I have all kinds of guests in the show, from the ones that have scaled to, hundreds and hundreds of properties, like you have. I also have the more boutique, operators that have purposely decided to keep it small. And it's both are fine, right? It's just different choices. But I'm curious to know, how do you go about, standardizing, without losing on the quality of the service, right? Because a lot of people would argue that the risk of too much standardization is, losing on, let's call it the essence of the industry, which is that hospitality side of what we're doing when it comes to delivering that, experience to the guest. And at the end of the day, that translates into, reviews, which also translates into revenue and, homeowner retention. So it's all interrelated. But how do you go about standardizing without affecting quality of service?
I mean, I think standardizing is going to improve your quality of service overall. And in my opinion, it's really right. You can't standardize so specific that you weed out any potential new leads, and new owners that you can get. Right, you could go very specific. But to me, it's quality over quantity. I'd much rather have 10 high performing luxury homes, than 50 budget properties. It's just going to be higher overhead costs for maintaining those homes, and then even maintaining the owners themselves. So being kind of, I guess, more specific is, is there a property size or subset that you like and you're looking for? For us, we don't really take any budget properties anymore. That's something we did in the past, but what we found was, those owners may not be willing to replace things that break. And the quality of the experience to the guests just wasn't very good. And at the end of other end of that, like we don't deal in the ultra luxury space. I've had, properties, 10 plus $1 million properties that have, requested our service. And it was something very specific where, they have a lot of high end, NFL teams and celebrities and things like that, where they need just, they need the concierge. They need almost somebody on site to deliver that $500 bottle of, whiskey or whatever they're asking for.
Mm-hmm.
We can't, I don't think we could, maybe that's a later on, that's another subset service we can offer, Host Deluxe model.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point we got to kind of cap it and see what are we actually expectation wise, what are we actually able to manage, and then what do we not want to manage.
Mm-hmm.
That's true with the owners as well. It's an investment property, and with this, a lot of homeowners are very new to investing. This may be their first, kind of
Mm-hmm.
investment property or any kind of investment, so they may just not have a lot of experience in it and not understand the expectations of it. But something with that too is like with your owners, can they actually afford this investment when we hit slow season or we have a bad month? Can they support it? Or if we have the market turns and we have a couple bad months, are they going to need to sell the property? So there are things like that you may need to specify within your business, to kind of prevent those. Because if somebody can't support 1 or 2 bad months, you're probably looking at higher costs to bring the higher acquisition costs than what you've actually made in that
Mm-hmm.
short amount of time that they're going to offboard. So looking for owners who have some experience investing and then are looking to do this for the long term. I've so many owners that they buy this $1 million home and they're looking to do this for 6 months to a year. What other investment do you invest $1 million in and then just plan on, selling it within 6 months or a year? It
Yeah,
just,
and
it
making
makes,
and making a crazy profit, right? Because that's
yeah,
what you were
yeah. So,
promised
and,
by
and
the
part of that, right? This
broker
new
or
industry,
whatever.
and especially we saw 2021, 2022, right? This is the sexy industry, get rich quick kind of thing. And while I think, the margins are certainly, uh, better than, long-term investment property, it's still not going to be right unless you just get lucky or you've got the perfect house or the perfect market. You can probably, most of our owners do cash flow, but you're not gonna get rich quick off one individual short-term rental property in six
Mm-hmm.
months or a year. It's not how it
Definitely,
works.
definitely. No, I think you could not have explained that better, and I agree with what you said. I think you're definitely right that standardization, you know, will help quality instead of the opposite, which is what my question was. Um, I think to your point, and I think that's a great point. The people that argue that too much standardization can hurt the quality of the service tend to be on that ultra luxury space, where you can afford that extreme level of customization, and
Right.
that's where you'll argue that too much standardization will affect the service. But the reality is that unless you are in that ultra luxury space, which most people
Yeah.
aren't, uh, then you can't afford it. You just have to have some level of standardization. And I think what's tricky with that is that, in a way, the smaller you are, and just parenthesis, the other thing that I hear about when it comes to too much standardization hurting service is that at the end of the day, you want your people to be able to take decisions on the fit that is going to help solve problems. And that sometimes when we go into the trying to standardize everything, SOPs for everything, there's always going to be this one thing that happens that there's not an SOP for. So
Mhm.
it's this idea of like, yes, have SOPs, yes, standardized, but also make sure you are training your team on how to think about how to solve this issue, so that when
Yeah.
something happens that you don't have that SOP for, they can think, okay, what should I optimize for? What are our values, or what are our decision making criterias, or whatever you want to call it, and
Yeah.
and make sure that you don't just have executors of whatever you told them to do, but also thinkers in a way.
Yeah, when they run into some, because yeah, the SOPs, the policies, that's guidelines, that's general operating guidelines. That should touch and hit 90% of any question or any situation. But yeah, there are always outliers where it's like, okay, we don't, maybe this owner isn't perfectly aligned with our service, or right, they don't hit this specific policy, or they want something very specific. But at least in that case, right, you're giving them the ability to answer the majority of the questions that are coming in. Otherwise, what I experienced was, as the owner of the company, every single question funnels to you, and you just get eaten up with, all your time just goes to answering very general questions. So if you can write out the right documentation for most general practices, you can kind of, automate that away and give them the ability to, hey, this is generally how we make decisions in these specific cases. This is where we can escalate it. This is where we can talk about it and maybe make an exception to one of those policies.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense. Uh, and you talked about people too. As far as one of the things you spend a lot of time on. Um, what have you learned about that aspect of either hiring the right people, making sure you can attract the right talent, or even like talent retention? Such a talent intensive you know business that we're in. So what is your approach when it comes to dealing with talent?
Yeah, I mean, generally, like, I'm, looking for someone who's honest and transparent, but also accountable. Those are probably some of the core things. And of course, what I found very early on hiring was just getting to someone to do the basic things like show up on time, were extremely difficult. Whereas, coming from a military background, that's not an issue, right? They own you. You don't show up on time. They can do whatever they want. They can kick you out. They can do whatever they want. But with this, obviously, in um, the public sector, it's a little different. People can just choose not to come in on that day. It's kind of challenging. So those are the things I look for. Is this person timely? Very basic, seemingly basic things. I thought they were, but during the interview process, does this person show up on time? And in the military, we say if you're not 15 minutes early, then you're late. So if people are showing up early for an interview, that's a good indicator. And then of course, what's their background? What's their skill set? I really like soft skills a lot more than necessarily, what do they have a degree in, or even what they have experience in. It's like, what are your soft skills? Are you on it generally honest and accountable, for when you do inevitably make a mistake? Are you going to be accountable to an owner and let them know, hey, yeah, I messed up, I missed this deadline, but going forward, here's what we're going to do to fix it. So does that kind of answer your question? I mean, I can go further than that if you'd like, but
No, that's interesting. In terms of what you're looking for, honesty and accountability, and it's also very interesting to understand your perspective again, coming from that military background of like, yeah, these are things that I'm sure you would never even have to think about in the military, like showing up on time. I mean, maybe even the way you dress up. I don't know. I haven't been in the military, but I've seen movies and read some books, and it's like, yeah, how do you make sure that you are strict enough to where you have people that can perform, right? But when is too much discipline? Is there such a thing as too much discipline, right? I guess especially given that military background. Like, did you have to soften yourself up a little bit in terms of how strict you were, with your employees?
yeah,
And has that been a process?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I had to soften myself up and expectations. But I mean, I think generally, if I don't know if it's just me and being able to been doing it so long, but generally I can kind of tell those things just from talking to a person. Whether they're going to be accountable, whether they're going to be prompt. And again, the soft skills is like, do you have the the thirst for knowledge, and do you have the ability to learn? Because what I found is most people can be trained on pretty much anything. It's just, are they willing to? Um, are they willing to unlearn what they've learned, or learn new things? But as far as softening up my kind of expectations, and it's not, it's I'd say it's a very lax environment. It's quite the contrary to the military.
Yeah, I can imagine the big contrast.
I don't want to be over someone's shoulder all day, keeping eyes on them and micromanaging them. It's like, can I trust you to be consistent and do this day to day on your own without me, telling you to do it? And some of that's part of the interview process. Some of that's part of the 90-day test period. But, after they've proved themselves and gained my trust, then it's like, all right, I trust you to go out and do this, and we'll have check-ins, and we'll have manager meetings. But generally, I want to be able to trust them to go out and do it. But of course, they have to establish that first.
And you talked about soft skills, and I love that you gave those examples of honesty and accountability, right? You also talked about the importance of unlearning and being able to unlearn certain things. What do you think are things that are important to unlearn if you want to succeed as a vacation rental property manager? Like, was there anything that you had to unlearn?
I mean, it could be something very specific, like someone with a hospitality background, but it's very specific to hotels and how they do things. It could be someone from they have a customer service background, where they did something very specific, a very specific cadence and way that they communicate with their owners, where we may do it a little differently. Even from maintenance personnel too. This is a little different. Most maintenance technicians that we hire have a background in apartment complexes or hotels where they're on site in one particular location. Of course, this is drive to, right? They're driving all day to different houses. So those kind of things are a little different, and expectations there are just a little different. So those are kind of some of the things they kind of have to unlearn and learn the new expectations of what we do things.
Let's talk a little bit about your vision for Hoste. Where do you want to take this company? What do you see ahead? What would you like to accomplish over the next couple of years? Yeah, what's ahead for you guys?
Yeah. So last year, 2023, I told you we kind of overextended ourselves and kind of scaled a little too fast, or didn't kind of keep the product and quality up with our scale. So we kind of took a step back, didn't take a ton of new homes on, really just tried to dial in our core functions that I've kind of talked to you about. But now, I think we're pretty aligned now, and I think we're ready to really start scaling and growing. So we're probably looking at some, I'd say smaller acquisitions, 25, 50 unit company acquisitions, strategically in our current markets. And then we may look at a new market. I was looking at Florida. Now talking to some property managers down there, I'm kind of scared, just because with the hurricanes, several operators I've talked to, half of their inventory is insurance claims and flood damage. So they're kind of, pun intended, underwater. But yeah, probably looking at a new market expansion. The idea of, we're starting Colorado Springs and we've kind of expanded out regionally. We're kind of touching on Denver now. So that may be a market we kind of expand into. And then just some smaller regional mountain towns we've expanded into. And then 2 years ago, we expanded to Arizona. We're in the Phoenix, Scottsdale area. Mm-hmm. So I think there's huge potential for that market. There's just not a lot of operators with a lot of properties in that area, but you've got 25,000 total units in that location. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So we'll probably look at, a smaller 25, 50 unit expansion there. Mm-hmm. What else? We're going to dial in our owner support a little more, give that specific team a lot more training this year. My goal for that team is to get under 45-minute response time to owners, and then 24 resolution time. So that'll be kind of the next goal there.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're probably, I think we may be ready to bring back the experiences. So I'm looking at implementing some new technology that'll allow some of those upsells and the scheduling and management of those services. So we may slowly try to implement that again. In-home chef experiences, the massages, the yoga, in-home yoga, all
Mm-hmm.
that stuff. A little bit of everything. But I did one of those in-home chef experiences, and it was kind of family style. It was a friend's birthday. It was at one of our properties, and Bon was the guy. He was the chef, but at each course that came out, he would explain the course. We'd pass it around, saying happy birthday, but just like a family coming in and be able to have that experience, like a family reunion. It was an amazing experience. So that's something I really want to bring. I want to bring back, that I like a lot. What else?
Interesting. Philip, I
Yeah.
want to touch on two things you mentioned, right? So one is going to be the expansion into new markets. So I just want to touch on that for a minute. But before we get into that, you mentioned that you realized that you had overextended, right? And that you had to kind of take a step back, fix a couple of things, make sure that you were ready for that next phase of growth. What are the signs of being overextended? Like how did you realize that you were overextended, so that maybe if an operator is in a similar position, they can see like, oh, I have those symptoms too, this might mean that I'm overextended, right?
Yeah, I mean, your main indicators are going to be your retention rates. If you have a huge uptick of owners offboarding due to quality and product issues with maintenance, with cleaning, whatever it is, and then of course the other side, the reviews. If your reviews are starting to suffer, you got to do some analytics and see where are these bad reviews coming from. Is this across the board? Are there commonalities behind these? And there's a lot of tools, and I think even Airbnb now has some pretty good keyword association features now, where you can pull out, is it a lockout issue? Or a lot of guests getting locked out? Is it a cleaning issue? What is that specific cleaning issue? Is it tied to a specific cleaning company you have, or is it across the board? So for us, it was both those things. Our quality was going down. We lost Superhost. We had owners communicating they weren't happy with the quality of our product. And those were all indicators like, okay, it really boiled down to cleaning and maintenance, and communication of maintenance to owners too, because that was another thing. It was right. A lot of times it's, the hot water heater goes out, and you get, two contractors to go get you a bid, and then you have to communicate to the owner, hey, here's the two bids we got. Would you like to do this yourself, or would you like us to go ahead and have one of these companies go ahead and replace it? Right now, the unit's blocked. We can't rent this out. We're at a standstill. So that was another thing we implemented, was that kind of communication with owners. Each time we have one of these maintenance tasks that involves, potentially money out of their pocket, we give them the ability to make that decision. So yeah, it really just depends. You got to listen to, and one end your owners, and then one end your guest.
Mm-hmm.
But with us, it was like, we're getting a lot of owner communication, but if we clean up the maintenance issues, then the owner communication stops. So you got to kind of figure out what's your root issue.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you don't just fix the symptom, right? Like you go and make sure you can fix it at the source. So it's interesting. Yeah, keeping a pulse on those reviews, keeping a pulse on those, on churn. What's your churn rate and whatnot? Like the rate at which you're losing owners. That makes sense. And then I guess through keeping a pulse on those two metrics, once you saw that the trend was going back up, you said, you know what, I'm confident now that we can press back on the pedal. And then, that pressing back on the pedal is where you're now looking at opening new markets. So how do you think through opening new markets? Is this something that I guess just tell us a little bit about, what's the first time you opened a new market, and at what kind of stage of growth were you in? And having opened a new market already in the past, what are you thinking of doing differently or better this time, in the Arizona market?
Yeah. Yeah, that was I want to say about 2.5 years ago. We expanded to Arizona. I mean, you always got to do a ton of market research. Is this the right market? Does this fit our business model first? What's the permitting look like there? Do they even allow short-term rentals, or is it too limiting where we'd be able to scale or expand? You have to look at all those things before you ever consider moving to a new market. And then who's going to be your boots on ground there? That's a key feature. You need to have someone that's on the ground. That's right. You may not have the financial capability to build out a full expansion team at once, right? So it may be kind of piecemeal. Hey, we're going to get, in our case, what we did was we sent our sales business development guy down there. He's worked with us so long. He has good experience in onboarding and in some of the operational pieces, and obviously owner communication. So what we did was just kind of a slow rollout and kind of built the team as we grew and could support it financially. So, once we got to a couple homes, then, okay, let's hire our maintenance piece in. And for us, we found a key partner in that market. Shout out to Well and Good. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're
We had John on the show as a guest as well.
Yeah, Jonathan was so nice. Okay, yeah. So that really was what made that much easier. Was the cleaning piece was solved. We didn't have to set up a laundry facility. We didn't have to buy a ton of linens. We didn't have to hire any kind of cleaning contractors. They kind of had that piece in place, so we could focus on all the other things. So if you find something like that, perfect, do it. But otherwise, yeah, you have to plan all those things individually, and then do you have the capital to do a large, quick expansion, or is it going to kind of be slow moving, and you kind of just grow the team out as the properties scale?
Yeah, thanks for breaking that down, Philip. This has been great. I could keep you here for 2 more hours, maybe even 3, but I won't do that to you. It's been fun. Thanks for taking the time. Anything you would like to say just to finalize? Any final thoughts of wisdom or advice, or things you wish you had known before, as far as just succeeding in this vacation rental space, and dealing with the complexities that we all deal with?
Yeah, I mean, again, I just go back to, like, the end product is your guest experience, and the main core functions of that are maintaining the home, the inventory, and the cleaning of it. If you can get those nailed down and really refine those, everything else will probably come a lot easier, especially when it comes to owner communication. Get those 2 pieces nailed down, and don't let up on those. Those always need to be kind of top of mind, and find what different metrics you can measure to identify whether it's successful or not, whether that's your overall reviews, or you get an analytics tool that can specifically pull out what issues you're having. That's probably the main.
Yeah. And sorry, I know we were wrapping up, but one last question. What's a tech item or solution or provider that you have not been able to find a solution for? Like, what is, like, if you're thinking about your entire tech stack, all the tools you have, like, what would you say is like a missing piece in this industry? I mean, owners portals was one of them. You built it.
Yeah.
Is there like another thing that you're like, in the coming years, if I don't find a solution for this, I might end up building it?
I don't know if I would. I probably wouldn't get into building this. I'll probably just wait till it gets better. But
okay.
PMS integrations with all the OTAs, to me, is still not there, and I know it's
Really?
very difficult and very complex. But I don't.
Hmm.
And specifically when it comes to right, different filters and amenities that Airbnb
Hmm.
may have that your BO doesn't, and those don't
Hmm.
quite translate um, the right way. So you end up have to actually go into each platform and do some manual management and integrations. Um,
Hmm.
I'm not building the PMS. Not going to do it. That's a beast. But that's probably something that's, it's still fairly challenging. Airbnb makes a significant update, and it takes 6 months to a year for whatever PMS you're on to catch up and
Hmm.
add those specific filters. So you may be missing out on, those specific amenity filters or whatever it is within that platform's algorithm.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. The listing optimization side of things remains very manual. You're right about that. That's a good one. All
The,
right.
the, the challenge is all these different softwares and people's tech stacks aren't necessarily integrated that well. So unless you're going to build it all out, which I wouldn't, yeah, it's just probably going to be finding the right softwares, the right tech stacks to integrate those appropriately. But you have some bleed over and you have some loss between
Hmm.
those. But again, I see continue, and you probably see the same thing and hear this a lot. There's consolidation continues to happen, and I think that's probably the way it'll go. Well, you'll have a PMS that has everything. It has your lock system, your accounting system, your task management system, pretty much everything integrated in it. That's probably where things will go, and it makes sense. It's just too hard to
Hmm.
piecemeal all these together and expect them to fit well, like a puzzle piece. So
Yeah, and I think the challenge in the PMS space is, at first there were some clear winners and leaders, right? And some that were raising a lot of money, right? And being very proud about that, you know, money that they had raised and the fact that they had more engineers than everyone else and whatnot. Then as you start to have more PMSs kind of raise similar amounts of money and kind of, you know, be at the same level, and then, consolidation, and, some become larger and larger because they acquire more and more PMSs, then it seems like they stop playing the game of innovation because now they're having to play the game of, you know, growth, because, we want to IPO because, we raise all this money. And what people don't realize is that that money is not free, right? It's not a gift, it's not something to celebrate, it's
yeah,
something that now the investors are expecting a 10x return on. So then you start, and the other thing that doesn't help innovation, or, I don't know how you would think about this, but if one player has a new feature, and then all of a sudden the next player, it becomes very easy for them to replicate that feature because, again, now they have similar, resources.
yeah.
Then it's like, what's the incentive then to innovate, right? Challenging.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the people on the ground, your property managers, are the people that know best what's needed. So I mean, it would
Hmm.
probably be either getting feedback from property managers, or start hiring uh property management operators or consulting with them to kind of get that information of where are things going, what are the necessary tools that are out there that are needed now, what's kind of the next step to this. But yeah, I get what you're saying. I've seen a lot of different PMSs that they're good, and they're a lot of them are kind of on the same level. They have basically the same key features, and the only distinction is the pricing point.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, what's the next step? What's the next new innovation? And it's not just as generic as yeah, I got a lock system that can
Hmm.
can automatically
Because
add
now they
guest
all
codes,
have that,
right?
so it's like it's
That
no
that's
longer an edge.
that's old news. That's 5-10 years ago. Like what's the next piece of that? But I am seeing some kind of cool ones. I don't know, Links lock system company. They have um a TV smart tool now where you can integrate with your PMS. And whenever the guest shows up at the property, right, it's like a hotel. When they turn on the TV, they've got, hey, welcome Sebastian. Uh, and then you've got upsell features and things like that you can do on it. So there are some companies that are innovating, but as far as like PMSs, I haven't really seen any new game changers. I'm still waiting on somebody to kind of catch up to where our owner portal is now and some of the features. still hadn't seen anybody doing it. So
Yeah. Well, listen, Philip, thank you again for your time. This has been very fun, and hope we'll see each other soon at one of the events coming up.
yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on, and happy holidays to you.
Yeah. Happy holidays as well. Have a good one. Bye.
All right, take care.